We're making this delicious baked potato soup. This soup is packed full of incredible flavors, easy to find ingredients, and to thicken it up so it's nice and creamy, we're gonna make a simple roux. To get started, we need 2 big carrots chopped. I have these slightly smaller carrots, the last remaining carrots from my big bag of carrots. You don't have to peel your carrots, I'm mostly removing just the questionable spots. How big you make your carrot pieces or any of your vegetable pieces is entirely up to you. I prefer my pieces on the smaller side. For the celery, we need 2 ribs of celery, also chopped. Again, these seem a little smaller than normal, so I snuck in an extra rib for good measure. Go ahead and chop them up however big or small you want. Although try to keep them as close to the same size as the carrots so they cook evenly. This is a rather large onion. The recipe calls for half a medium yellow onion diced. I love onions, and if this was a medium-sized onion, I would have used the whole thing. But it is rather large, so I'll save the other half for something else. We're gonna set this off to the side and get cracking on our bacon. The recipe calls for 4 thick slices of bacon chopped. Well, I don't have any thick cut bacon on hand, and honestly any kind, your favorite kind, will work. How much you want is entirely up to you. This bacon isn't getting tossed in the soup as an ingredient, but rather just as a topping. And since it wants to be chopped, instead of cooking it in strips and then chopping it up later, I'm just gonna get it all out of the way and do the chopping now. These pieces do look big right now, but it is bacon. They'll shrink up during the cooking process. Okay, I think we're ready to start cooking. To a pot on the stove, or in my case I have this big beautiful Dutch oven my mama gave me. We're gonna add in our bacon over medium-high heat and let that cook for about 4 to 5 minutes or until crispy. Grab a slotted spoon and fish out the pieces. Don't drain off the fat, we're going to use that to cook our veggies. Once all of your bacon is out of the pot, add in the onions, carrots, and celery. We're going to lower the temp just a little bit from the medium-high heat we had it set to. We don't need it that hot. We're going to let this cook for about 5 minutes, stirring every so often so nothing burns. While that's on the stove, we're going to dice up roughly 2 pounds of russet or golden potatoes. I'm using russet, and as you can see here, my potatoes have already been washed and peeled. Peeling is entirely up to you. I don't care much for potato skins in my soup, but I don't mind them in my mashed potatoes. Also to note, the 2 pounds of potatoes is mostly a guideline. Just eyeball it, no need to bust out your scale. Once all of your potatoes are chopped up into bite-sized pieces and ready to go, set that off to the side. We need to check on our veggies. And it looks like everything's coming along nicely. The carrots don't look as crunchy, and the onions and celery have softened up a bit. It's about time to add in some raw garlic and all of our herbs and spices. Just like with onions, I love garlic, so I am adding in a bit more. Also, I mostly roughly chopped my garlic. Definitely didn't mince it. There's nothing wrong with mincing it, I just didn't bother with it. We're gonna stir it in and let it cook for about a minute or 2, making sure it doesn't burn. After about a minute or so, we're gonna add in 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, half a teaspoon of dried dill, half a teaspoon of dried thyme, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Give that a quick stir. Now we're ready for the potatoes and the chicken broth. Dump in all of the potatoes, followed by 3 cups of chicken broth. I did end up tossing in the remaining broth from the container as there was hardly any left in the box. No point in leaving it out, it's just one less thing to store in the fridge. We're going to bring this to a simmer over medium-high heat. Look, little bubbles. Perfect. Then drop it down to medium-low and cover it with a lid. We're going to leave this alone and let it cook until the potatoes are tender, about 10 minutes. While that's cooking, let's make a roux. This is what will thicken our soup. We need 1/4 of a cup of melted butter over medium-high heat. Any small pot or saucepan will work. To our butter, we're going to add in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Grab a whisk and mix the flour in until you don't have any more lumps. Before we add any liquids, we're going to let the raw flour taste cook out. This should only take about a minute or 2. A little neat trick to know when it's ready is also by the smell. You kind of have to lean in close, so be careful, but basically once it's ready, your mixture should smell similar to a warm pie dough. At least that's what I've always noticed when making a roux. Next goes in 1.5 cups of milk. Try not to add it in all at once, we don't want to break our roux. Toss in a cup, give it a chance to thicken up before adding in the remaining half cup. We're going to let this thicken up, which should just take a few minutes. Now normally I would say if you're going to add in cheese to soup, shred it from a block so it melts better. Shredded cheese will melt, it'll just take a little bit longer because it's covered in stuff to keep it from clumping up in the bag. We need 1 heaping cup of shredded cheddar cheese. I eyeballed it, and I also used a Fiesta blend rather than straight cheddar cheese. Use what you have on hand. Let's check in with our soup. It's been 10 minutes and so far our soup smells amazing. Now it's time to check on the potatoes. Grab a spoon, fish out a potato chunk, and grab a fork. And if the fork goes in smoothly, your potatoes are ready. If your potato chunks are rather large in size, they might need a couple more minutes. But this looks good, let's continue. Grab your cheesy roux mixture and dump it all in. Give it a good mix and let it continue to cook for about 3 to 4 minutes. This next part is totally optional, but I like to add in a splash of heavy cream. I feel like this just makes it taste richer and creamier. I'd say my splash is about 1/4 of a cup if you're wondering. This too is optional, but since it is potato soup, I'm gonna mash up some of the potatoes, not all, just some. And here we go. This looks perfect. Here's an ingredients list. Be sure to add on that delicious bacon we cooked up earlier. There should be enough for several bowls of soup as we did cook up a fair bit. I've also added on some cheddar cheese and a few slices of green onions, all totally optional. It's still pretty cold where I live. We just had Christmas, so this is the perfect meal for this time of year. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out, and I'll see you all in the next video.